Good afternoon, everybody. It's Kalini Kent here. As most of you know, I've been doing a series of conversations with the most amazing people over the period of lockdown. And no less, we've got the wonderful Kirsty James in the studio with us today. Now, if you do want to share any comments, I just want to remind you that if you want to give StreamYard permission, then your name will actually show in the comments. But I first of all want to tell you a little bit about this amazing lady. People know her for Kalini networking. She's a networking queen, but she's also the founder and manager of Lim Business Centre. And she's also the curator of TEDx. So we're going to hear a lot about what she does. So I'd love to welcome into the studio the amazing Kirsty James. Hello and welcome, Kirsty.
Hello, and thank you for having me today.
Yeah, it's so nice to have you here. We've been chatting. In fact, you know what? I think it'll be a wonderful thing, first of all, for us to tell everybody how we first met, because it was a rather unusual meeting, wasn't it?
It was a little bit, and yeah, are you going to say that, or shall I share?
No, you tell us about it.
So
I just remember parking up a car, but you tell us the story.
Okay.
It's quite funny.
Yeah, despite the fact that we were already connected on LinkedIn and probably were aware of each other's names, we'd never had a conversation. And then I remember turning up to an event in Altrincham, the sort of an entrepreneur, small business type event. It was pretty nasty weather. I was around the back of the hotel trying to find a park space, and there were none. And then there was the tiniest little space, and you were looking at that space as well. And then two became three beside each other, and we both did a terrible job of manoeuvring into position, almost sort of simultaneously, side by side, and sort of looked over at each other. At that point, not knowing we were going to the same thing. So of course you look over and you're almost glaring a little bit like, oh gosh, we nearly got the last slot. You nearly got it. And then we got out the car, and I think you sort of said, are you going into that event? And I went, yes, are you? And so we walked and we talked. We only got about maybe 3 or 4 minutes, didn't we? Because we sort of checked in and went our separate ways, had the event for a couple of hours, and at the end of it, found ourselves sitting in the same area, started chatting. And it was about 2 hours later that we were still in that room, being asked probably to leave the room because we'd been waffling about absolutely everything under the sun, just the way it should be in life.
But what was so nice is that we just literally clicked straight away, didn't we? And we were able to just share so many things that we both do, so many mutual interests. And it was just really, really nice. And I think it's continued since then, hasn't it? We've talked about all sorts of different possible collaborations and a few things going forward. But I think it's just so lovely for everybody to get to know you, because people do think of you as Kalini networking. But I've obviously got to know all the different things that you do. And I'm sure other people would love to know. It's nice to get to know the real person behind the name. So where did it all start for you?
The networking bit, or the other millions of pies that I've got my fingers into? The networking bit is an interesting one, because that isn't my first business. I've been doing it for 14 years, but I was working in the corporate environment, as so many people are before they set up a business. I wasn't doing networking at the time. I was in a different role, but I was on the support staff side of the line in a corporate business. And I was noticing how valuable some of those support staff were, and sometimes how overlooked some of them were. I was involved tentatively in putting some events on, but they were always for people on the other side of the line, the client facing, the awards dinners, the golf days, the things like that. And I was also seeing a challenge that some of those senior contacts were having in terms of reaching people over the phone, or to get a meeting in. And it occurred to me that so many of those support staff were gatekeepers to the solution. Yeah. And so I proposed at the time that we set up something which I now reflect on as gatekeeper networking, to actually welcome in some of those support staff together across all different firms and have some networking. So it was very early days type networking. The likes of the networking groups were still out there in the world, the bigger ones, the franchise ones. I won't go naming, but the franchise ones. Independent, smaller networking groups really weren't a thing 14 years ago. And so I set up an internal thing in that corporate environment. It gave me a little bit of a bug for, this is great, actually. This solves problems, and solves problems quickly by helping to foster relationships with the right people that help solve those problems. Yep. And that's where the seed was planted. And long story short, I moved on from that corporate environment and left. Entry children into your life, that kind of thing happened. I went back after number one, and as I was having number two, I wasn't going back. I'd set up on my own by then, not in networking. And the networking was something that I kind of popped on the side, really. When you run your own business, it can be lonely. You don't have a sounding board. You don't have that support around you. You don't have a mechanism easily to go and attend a lot of big events and learn and pay for things. And networking in its fledgling form, for the independent groups was just starting to appear. And that's where I got the idea to set up. So that's now 14 years ago doing those events within the corporate, and then 12 years ago that I set up my own group. Wow. And Kalini itself has just had its 10th birthday, because I rebranded as Kalini 10 years ago.
That's fantastic. Just let you know, by the way, that we have a few people who are listening. So we've got Irene. Hi, Irene says. She's saying hi, Kirsty. Now I know that Irene has spoken for you. And also, this is a lovely friend of mine who's got the most incredible voice, Tom Lachlan. He sung for me as in fact, in Les Mis, we did a production of Les Mis. Hello, Tom, and it's lovely to hear from you. So, in fact, you've obviously therefore, I think you've got quite a unique skill, because, well, it's a skill of, it's a people skill, really, isn't it? Because you are an enabler, aren't you? You're a connector of people. And I know that you work sometimes in collaboration with other people, but I think what's lovely is that you have helped hundreds of businesses, not only in the networking sphere, but also one-to-one. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that? Because I think it's not just your events. I think you do actually work behind the scenes as well, don't you?
Absolutely. I think you're right. I think probably I get pigeonholed and have a little label on my head that says event organizer or networking events organizer. And I do that, but I should stress that is just one vehicle for solving people's problems. And what I'd like, I suppose, to be thought of before the event organizer is the person that is the enabler. It is the connector person. It is the person that comes up with that little solution or idea, and then puts the right contacts and people and detail around that idea to actually make it happen. And so, although I do events, I always say that they are just one vehicle of this, that can help a situation. They are just one little part of the equation. So I do events, but that's a proportion of my normal day job. Do we have any normals at the moment? Probably not, but that's a part of what I do. I then work with businesses one-to-one, or in group scenarios, or run workshops if they want a larger group. And then I obviously have some other projects as well, which I'm sure we'll come on to. So the events part is just part of it, but all an event does is just give you that little doorway. It gives people who attend a little glimmer of what could happen. I always call it, when you get your little moment of saying hello in an event, I always say it's like a little flirtation. You're just going out on a little, not even the date yet. You're having a little flirtation with other people, and all I'm doing is brokering that. I'm putting on the facility to meet people, and then hopefully they can take that further. But where people want a real, to pack a punch behind it and really, really get on with them networking, not just their skills, but really, how to solve all those problems in their business and life. If I've not got somebody that will solve it, or I can't do it myself, I'll probably know someone that can. And that's where networking is absolutely beautiful, because it does that. It gives you the introductions to the people, and then beyond them, an even bigger network of people that will solve problems for you if you get to the right person quickly.
Yes. And I think also networking, it can be tarnished with the wrong brush, can't it? Because people can go to networking events and have an awful experience. I certainly know that I've been to a couple, some of your events, I've spoken at them, and you do create a lovely environment for people to actually feel that they can comfortably at network. In fact, I just want to share here, Nicola Brown is, hi, Nicola.
Lovely, Nicola. Hi, Nick.
And also, Nicola said it's made a massive difference in her life. And I think it does do in quite a number of people's lives, because I think also there is an art to networking, isn't it? I think some people could go to networking events and think it's about sell, but it isn't. It's the opposite, actually, isn't it?
Absolutely. The sales should come way down the line. If somebody's going in there looking to sell, good luck to you. You may get lucky. You may stumble on that person that happen to need your services right at the moment, but the chances are you're going to stumble on a lot more people who are immediately put off by that. Yeah. It does come further down the line. And an awful lot of kind of, you mentioned about skill set. It is working out kind of how to network correctly. And the interesting thing with networking is people do tarnish it all with one brush and just sort of say, oh, it is like that. And I went to one and it was rubbish and it didn't work. And I kind of always question, well, why didn't it work? What were you going in? What were you doing? And we don't get taught to network. We might actually be very good communicators and we might be very good with our interpersonal skills, but I haven't yet found courses at university on networking. You get courses on marketing and social media, so the social networking side, but in terms of the face-to-face, those elements aren't all there. And I think as we move more and more into sort of digital marketing and having our conversations online, particularly at the moment, and via our phone and via all sorts of other media, we are slowly starting to lose those skills. And some people didn't actually have them in the first place, let's be frank. So it is a skill set. It's one to learn, just like any other skill set. And I think sometimes we have to hold a hand up and go, okay, I may not be that brilliant. I've met networkers who've said, oh, I've networked for years. I do loads of networking. I know what I'm doing. And then I kind of listen to them and think, okay, well, that wouldn't wash with me, that kind of approach. So, yeah, it is a skill.
And I mean, you're speaking my sort of language, because I think we've shared as well the fact that I do think so much of I do the art of communication, and it is so much about listening, finding out. I've got this phrase, Stephen Covey's, one of his habits, seek first to understand, then to be understood. It's about learning about the other person first so that you can build that know, like and trust factor, isn't it? Because it's not just about sort of going in and talking about yourself. And I've been at events, I'm sure you have, where you're speaking to somebody and you can see really all they're thinking about is what they want to say next.
And you hit exactly, and you hit the nail on the head there in terms of seek to understand. The best networkers are the ones that do a lot of listening. It's a cliche. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that proportion. It is a cliche statement, but it's absolutely true. And that's why what's really interesting is the people that don't like networking often, not all the time, can be introverts. And yet the introverts can be brilliant networkers for the very fact that they step back and listen and don't pounce and dive into conversations quickly. Networking isn't for the brave, the confident, the loud. Actually, networking in the best way is for the ones that actually do ask questions, ask really interesting questions, probing questions, listen to the answers. And you know, every moment, if I'm listening to someone, and this is what I love about what I do, people start talking and my brain is going ding, 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 they must speak to that person, and this could happen, and I wonder if they've ever been to there and they know about that. I wonder if they've heard about that project or initiative. I wonder if they've ever tried that group. They should go there. Because straight away when you listen to someone, if you're really going to, you know, add value back to that conversation and then do all the base work for a relationship to start growing, you've really got to be listening and sort of try to respond to what they need. So
So tell us a little bit about the structure then, because you obviously have, I think you're all over the place, aren't you? You're in Lymm, Warrington, Newton Le Willows, St Helens, and then you also have your membership. So how does that work?
Well, yeah, was all over the place. Now suddenly just on Zoom. It's interesting times, as it is for everyone. So I had never had any grand aspirations to start becoming, you know, Kalini franchise. That really wasn't in my plan. I love doing the one-to-one as small group work, but I also love doing the events because I come away from them with such a buzz. The people that it exposes me to for my own personal development, and the topics and the speakers, you know, that's the amazing bit. It's not just the sort of putting on events. So I never really planned to expand. But then I was approached, and I get approached really on the event side of things from a few different angles. Private clients might approach me and say, help me with this business development event. It's not networking per se. They may have a workshop, they may have a launch, a promotional thing. So I can be approached from that angle. And then there's other networking business development groups who I would work with collaboratively, because I'm so not a kind of it all, you know, one boot fits all. And if I'm going to be really sort of impartial about giving people networking advice, I need to be able to be honest and say, do you know, Kalini is not the right thing for you. You need to be going X, Y, and Z places instead. So I'm really quite collaborative in my approach with other groups. And as a result, several times a year, I run joint events. I host other people's events. I speak at other people's events. And I think that's really important. So people might approach me with that view. But then the third approach was people saying, why aren't you in that area? Have you not thought about going there? And I was like, I didn't really want to do that, because I've got to think about franchising, or I've got to put hosts in. I've got to kind of get people to buy into my culture. And I'm not possessive over my group, but I'm very clear about, the culture that I want it to foster and develop and nurture. And it's really important to me that when people walk through the door, they're made to feel relaxed and welcome, and they're in a comfortable place, and that we are all back to a level playing field as far as people are concerned. We're all just humans. We're not job titles and company names. And expanding to other areas carries a risk, because if I couldn't whiz around like a blue ass fly and get to everywhere myself to cover all events, there was the risk that I put something in that could change my culture and the way I like to see things being done. So I have in the last year, it was only really in the course of the last, well, been nearly up to 18 months now, because we've had 6 months, haven't we, playing around on Zoom. But over the last 18 months, I moved from just only being in Lymm, South Warrington, to going to Liverpool and Chester and Newtonley Willows, sort of on the border of St Helens, and Aldley Edge, and doing a few things as well in Manchester. I co-host LinkedIn Local, which is another networking movement. So that's it sort of keeps me firmly, it's sort of with a Manchester branded type event, and then there was another one for Warrington for LinkedIn Local. So lots of different areas, not overly planned. No big aspiration to do it, and they were going really well. If I, where I was in January and February, things were flying in terms of the other locations. I turned a corner in all the locations after, in some of them being a standing start. It was hard to get them going when you're not known in a certain area. But of course, we're all on Zoom now.
I know, and it must be a real, having spent so long building up your business. I mean, I know that you collaborate with Tricia Peters and with Sue France, don't you? So it must be, I know it's hitting everybody, hasn't it? So, how have you pivoted? Because I mean, I hate to use the word pivot, but effectively you've had to adapt, haven't you?
Yes.
And sort of change your business model, because I presume a sort of a huge chunk of income has also gone.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I'd probably say that a third of my work was events, my own brand, and then doing private event work. And obviously that's massively been compromised. So with the other 2/3 as well, if I'm honest, because, I run a business centre that's had to shut down, and I also do private work for small businesses, and a lot of them are in difficult positions. So yes, massively I had to adjust. Interestingly, with the networking side of things, and you mentioned Trish and Sue there, because I've always collaborated, and we've done the odd joint event over the years with all sorts of groups, not just them. We've carried on doing that, and there are so many group leaders where we chat regularly about the challenges we're facing and try to just bounce ideas off each other and talk about where we're going to go, because there is no crystal ball, and we don't know for sure. I have feelings as to where things will go, but things do change regularly. In terms of sort of the pivoting side of things, yes, favourite word of the year, pivot, along with unprecedented and you're on mute. We do I do actually have a game called Lockdown Lingo Bingo, which I've not put out yet, but I've literally put all these words together that we have used in the networking and business world like that. But in terms of pivoting, and someone very early on in just literally mid-April, so we're talking 2 to 3 weeks after lockdown, called me the Queen of Pivot on one of my events, which I was like, wow, gosh, I'm quite flabbergasted that I've been called that. It was lovely. And I just thought, I don't recall strategically pivoting. I just remember reacting and thinking, I'm not going down. I'm not going to disappear. And we went into lockdown, obviously, in a hurry on the 20th of March. Mid-March, literally on the 12th, 13th, I went immediately on Zoom. Luckily, I was using it already for private work, so I didn't have a learning curve there. But running some events is easy, smaller events, running large events, running things like speed networking, that was interesting on Zoom to start with. So there were some learning curves with the technology. I think we've all faced that, haven't we? Massive, rapid upskilling, going out of our comfort zone, having to try to cope with things that we just don't know what we're doing sometimes. But we're in an unforgiving market at the moment, in that we can just take risks and learn. So I pivoted to Zoom immediately. Every event went virtual. I carried on running everything. Ordinarily, I'd actually planned to take April off, because I'm also the curator of TEDx Warrington, and that was planned for June. And April was going to be a huge month of planning on that. So I'd not booked any other networking and other events. I'd cleared the month. And of course, we went into lockdown. It was apparent that TEDx would not go ahead. So I shelved that until later in the year. And it's now reshelved again until next year. I just feel that we need to have that recovery time first, if we all get it, obviously. But what happened then was that I suddenly had April empty. And I thought, oh my God, if I just disappear now, people are going to be like, where's she gone? Where's she gone at the most important time ever? Has she gone under? What's happened? And I can't do that. So April, I just chucked back in new events, put them all on for free. May, I returned to normal schedule as planned, but all online. And then, of course, the world of events and online events hugely changed. And only if you're in events will this maybe resonate. But what's happened is, I suppose it's been very, very, we've transitioned over to virtual. That's the easy bit, actually, looking back. We've also moved into a phase now where people are completely fatigued. It was fun at the beginning, and we're now fatigued. So it massively challenges attendee numbers and commitment from people and willingness to join in. People judge before they've even tried it as to whether they're going to do it, because we're all exhausted, aren't we? All a bit fed up. I mean, I even get bored on events, and I love networking other people's stuff.
And I think it's not just Zoom fatigue, but I think also I just have generally found, and I don't know if other people have, there's just so much noise on social media. You've got so many challenges and so many groups going, and you can attend this and attend that. And I think I certainly, in fact, Nicola, who also runs Parentpreneur, I know that Nicola's faced the same challenge, because I think so many people were putting stuff out there that was free. And then I think you've obviously also had to compete with that, haven't you? Because if you're used to actually charging for something, and then you can see Joe Blogs next door doing it for free, it's really hard, isn't it? So I do know, yes.
That's been a huge area. That's probably, as well as the numbers, which is the fatigue and the number dips later have now kicked in more substantially across all groups that I've spoken to. But early on, no one reacted really, really quickly, like within the first 2 weeks getting on Zoom. It all happened really around week 3 to 4. It's interesting because I think it very much mirrors the change curve, and we've talked about that in terms of different people being on that, how they react and how quickly. And I was very quick off the mark, getting online, converting things, seeking out new content, putting more stuff on than I normally do, putting free stuff because people wanted that. And then exactly what you just said became the challenge. That people that didn't have an online event product or service or concept all of a sudden did. So the whole world's going online with something to offer. Then there's the camp of people that have money behind them. They're bigger, they're sponsored, or they're the larger franchised, or they've got public money or grant money pumped into them, and they can chuck out the freebies, which is wonderful. I have to say, I've been on the buying side of that, where I'm going to other people's, and it's brilliant. It's a buyer's market. You can go to a lunch and learn or a this or a that any time of the day, any day of the week. And there was so much out there for free. And that's when then things got tricky, because I'd have people who would normally pay telling me, I'm really sorry, things are tricky now. I don't have the finances. I know I've come for ages and we've got good relationships, but there's all these things for free I can go to, and I just can't commit. And that suddenly the pay-as-you-go market goes, doesn't it?
So I'll just share a few comments with you, which are popping in because we've got Irene and Nicola. I'll come back to a couple of Irene's shared as well. And I do think this is relevant in terms of, we've all been suffering from social isolation, haven't we? And I think it concerns me about the mental well-being side of things, because really the whole point about networking, it's that social interaction, and we are social animals and we're geared up for interacting. So I do think everybody's been missing the face-to-face interactions as well, haven't they? But I also wanted to share a couple of comments also from Irene has asked. In fact, Irene's just shared as well that the positive she's found is she's been able to virtually meet other people that she normally wouldn't meet face to face. And I really do echo that, Irene, because I do think that it saved a lot of us the commute time and the fatigue of parking up and driving and getting somewhere and rushing to the next thing. I've been able to fit more into the day, but it's also, I think, don't know about you find this, it's that balancing act of therefore not then using the spare time to work more. I think there's been that fatigue as well, hasn't there? I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
Definitely. There are massive advantages with going virtual. It has to be said. Let's not just sort of say, oh, it's all been a nightmare and we all want to get back to face-to-face. Yes, a lot of us do. But there are, in terms of where I was going, I was zipping all over the region, you know, every day of the week, and suddenly everything just slowed down, and I went, thank heavens for that. There were, you know, it was actually quite a relief a lot of the time not to be going at the pace that I was going. And I was speaking to people who were saying it's great. Not only can I meet people out of region that I would have never had exposure to before, but I can maximize my time. So the time efficiencies of this were brilliant, which is why we'll never go back fully to the way we were, because we have discovered that technology and different ways of doing things is going to be really efficient for us in terms of all those one-to-one coffees. You know, we packed a diary, didn't we, with all these follow-up coffees. We can do so much on Zoom. So virtual networking will be part of the mix going forward. There's no doubt. There's huge benefits for that. But the face-to-face, I think that human contact bit is probably now the bit that just generally in life, let alone at business events, we are missing.
Yeah, and I just want to also share, Irene had asked the question, and in fact, Nicola's also commented on it. I do think this is really important. Do you see a difference between women-only networking and mixed events? And Nicola also has just also asked the question. You know, men definitely do network differently. And I don't know if this is an observation of yours. I mean, I've been doing a lot of talks in different groups, and I definitely find that you have often women only. And then when there's one man, they feel really quite awkward. And then when you've got a couple of men, then it's a bit more of a balanced feel to it. But I don't know if you find that.
Yes, I do. It's interesting, the male and female different things. And of course, we'd be talking, you know, it's stereotypical to sort of put everybody in the same category. So I've had, 12 years of running networking events. It was only 3 years ago that I started running women only. So I have a sub-brand, Kalini Women. And I had resisted running female-only events for a couple of reasons. One, there's some brilliant people doing stuff already. And we've mentioned Trisha and Sue. They run brilliant women's events. And I was happy just going to theirs, an attendee, switch off, not organising. So I didn't need to do that. There's people in the market who do it brilliantly. And the other reason was I kind of had a bit of an attitude that was, just crack on, come on, you know, you just got to get on with it in a mixed environment, you know, stop thinking that we need a special environment and whatever. I was probably a little bit in that camp where, because I'm very comfortable in male company as well as women's company, I didn't have an issue. And then I had some of my own attendees, because I have both members and pay-as-you-go, in both categories, telling me, I'm not comfortable in some of your events anymore. I'd rather be in a female only event. And that hit me like a ton of bricks, and thought, oh my word, I could potentially lose people here because I'm not delivering what they want. So that was the point at which I started to run Kalini Women. I only did 3 or 4 a year because I had, you know, plenty of other events anyway. And as I said, I felt that people were well served in that market. It's a very busy and saturated market in our region, with, you know, over 20 groups in the Warrington area and over 50 on my list in the region. Very busy market. You have to do something different. So I started Kalini Women. I did it around a catering twist. So I had things that it was always called networking something food. So it was like networking chocolate, networking soup, networking coffee. And I would bring in a speaker. One of the speakers would be around that catering theme. So we had someone that produced coffee to do the little ditty around coffee as the breakout. And then we'd have catering and networking tea and afternoon tea and networking soup. We all had soup. I even had one lined up for networking sausages, because I had a lady who made sausages and she was going to talk about how you make them. So everything was just a little quirky twist around the catering as the downtime kind of thing. And the reason I decided to relent was not just because people were sort of going, oh, I'll not come if you don't put one on, but because I had that light bulb moment of realizing that, yes, people do network differently. So, you know, in terms of your question, do men and women network differently? Some, not all, but some do. And women, the biggest generalization I suppose I can make is that women network a lot on intuition and instinct, gut instinct, and on sort of judgment, but based just on can I empathize, have I connected? So us getting out of the car in the rain, we weren't talking about business or network, we were talking about whether we just got rained on and we had wet hair, or we were late for the thing, or our shoes were out, or whether we parked straight. And women tend to do that. They tend to talk about the trivialities, and a triviality isn't because it's irrelevant. Triviality, by that I mean it's the small talk, and networking needs small talk as icebreakers, and that's where women really, and a lot of men I know, I have to say, do it really well. They get the small talk right, whereas men, some, again, not all, can be very much based on credentials. You know, hi, who are you, where are you from, what's your background, who do you work for, what's your experience, how long have you been doing it, what kind of clients do you have. A little bit more like just trying to ascertain the relevancy of their conversation and their credentials up front.
Do you know what? I think a lot of this, though, we could be really going into deep stuff here, because I do think a lot of this is to do with, I don't want to stereotype men or women. I definitely don't like doing that. But I do think it's about what you feel comfortable with and your comfort zones. And often it's an expectation, I think, for men not to sort of go in and how are you and what you're doing. Whereas I think that for women, you do ask the touchy-feely questions, which men probably don't feel as comfortable doing. Not many men do. I think that is one of the factors, but I also think as well that sometimes men do gravitate to going to events organized by men. And I think that is probably a factor, because certainly with all of the groups I've been talking in the last few months, it has tended to be a lot more men in the ones organized by men. And I don't know.
That's interesting.
Well, you obviously wouldn't come across that because you're a female and you're running them. Whereas I did quite a lot of events talking about, I did 7 in 2 weeks, and it's been very, very different in each one. So I think that's possibly part of the factor.
It could well be. I would say so. It's interesting because my different areas have different profiles. So, for example, my Liverpool event had more men. I don't do anything different. I'm just me still, but I had more men in that group. And then I have my Newton group, and it's nearly all women. There's 2 guys, and they always joke when they come on, they sort of go, token bloke again. And I don't know whether they've got a part of them that kind of quite likes that female company, whether they're in tune a little bit more to that chit chat kind of method. I don't know whether it's the culture that I'm sort of nurturing along at the start of the event, because the comfort zone thing that you mentioned there, it's absolutely critical to me to make sure people feel comfortable. So I don't know about the male female. I'll maybe have to look at my stats. I do tend to, I used to more in the early days, less now, actually monitor my stats in terms of female, male, age profile, size of business, just to see where the trends are going a little bit.
Well, can you remember that one I've recently done? I did a talk at, and there was one lone man. And I had to, as I was presenting, had to be very careful to not say ladies, because obviously when I'm actually talking in groups where it's most all women, dead easier to say ladies. So I had to say ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, gentlemen. And with an example, I remember you used an example that was relevant to the male market. But I don't like to get hung up on gender, just as I don't like to get hung up on any differences between anybody for, race, religion, gender, age, sexuality, the rest. One of the things people will hear me say a lot is that you walk into that room and the playing field is leveled. We are all back at point zero as people. And whenever, if ever, I hear a story of anyone in an event that I'm coordinating in any way being rude or judgmental to anybody based on anything that doesn't, promote equality of everything, of opinion, of just being you for you, that would infuriate me, and they wouldn't be welcome. Because so I'm not really hung up on the male female. If I get one guy in an event or I get 20 guys in one, I have to say I love them both in the right way.
And in fact, I remember that event because I think it was a chap called Len. He wrote a book about franchising, and I do remember I always have in any of my information, it was about the stress response, and I had pictures of these stick women, and then I said, just for you, Len, this is for you. And it was showing the opposite with so it was gender neutral. Just share with you a comment from Nick. We need to find ways to do the small talk part via Zoom. And that is so true, isn't it? I think Zoom is good because it offers the breakout rooms, isn't it? Thank you, Nick. It offers the breakout rooms, and it gives you the opportunity to go into your chats. But it is talking about, sort of like being very aware of how people are feeling. I think it is also an element of people have had to learn an etiquette about Zoom, haven't they? And in fact, I've seen quite a few funny poems about this, because I think people, they do need to learn how to, I mean, people forget they are constantly on, you are visible all the time unless you turn your camera off.
Yeah, no, for sure. Very early on, it was interesting watching people's behaviour, because although I know people would see me as sort of the upfront and the coordinator and the chatty one, by character, by nature, and it's always been this way, I am actually an introvert. I am the person usually that's sitting back. So going to an event, I'm very much, let's just take a look, let's survey, let's take things in. And so a lot of the Zoom events that I joined, where I was an attendee, not running it, I would do a lot of studying people's behaviour. And there were lots of things that started to develop, and the Zoom etiquette, as you mentioned it, really became quite interesting. So along the way, I sort of collated a lot of these points, and then started giving talks on virtual imposter syndrome, and also virtual networking skills, because there's the logistical skill set around just making everything work technically, getting the right window and being on gallery or speaker at the right moment, and opening the chat when there's logistical stuff, making all the buttons work, and muting, switching your video on. And then there's the actual subliminal level stuff, the behavioral stuff, which is quite hard to tell people directly to do if they don't necessarily think about, and also without being rude. I do give a briefing, what I call familiarization, at the start of every Zoom session. I do suggest to people that they don't dive into the chat with a load of sales pitches, that they give people the benefit of their full attention as they're speaking, that they don't chat during except for questions, or things relevant to the speaker content. I think we've got a little bit rude actually on Zoom compared to how we would be at an event. Now, take a standard event, you go in and you listen to a speaker, and depending on the size of the event might affect whether you were sat on your phone or not. Big conferences, yes, you would, and you might be on social media interacting and all sorts. But smaller events where it was fairly intimate, and especially if you're on the front table or front row, you would by and large be looking at that speaker and giving them your attention and listening. After all, that's what you went there for, amongst other things. Yes, on Zoom, the camera's on and off, you're muting on and off, you're deciding to, whatever. And we've all been there, have lunch, have chat to people, and on the side, we're doing things on our phone. Our attention span, if we were ever multitasking before, we're now really multitasking, and we're breaking on our attention. But sometimes it borders on the rude, I find. And so Zoom etiquette is exactly the right phrase. We do need to, sort of tidy up that side of things, or we'll just be put off.
Well, I've certainly found that a lot of people, there's been a big opening for me to just help people with how to actually present on camera. Because, of course, I've suggested this to you. It's also the fact that people forget that, you're only taking about 7% of what a person says. So the rest of it is the body language, the eye contact, the facial expressions, the smiling. But it's also the fact that people are forgetting that if you were watching a television screen, which is what this is effectively, you've got all of those different camera angles, panning in and out, changing angles so that it looks interesting, whereas it's just you. And people do find that really petrifying, and they don't know how to handle it or manage it. And it's about looking at the viewfind,
the camera, the webcams. And I certainly, during this, obviously, I know my eyes are a bit dipped because I'm focusing on your face rather than the camera, but it is challenging, the logistical stuff. And we do have to find different ways of engage with people. It's sort of like in the room, there were kinds of things in networking that in the room people didn't, we've all sort of been there, not like too much, like the circle of death, doing your introductions, and it's coming round, here it comes, my 60 seconds of glory. And then and it's sort of, I always used to joke that I'd always mix it up. I don't like it going around in a circle anyway, even if we were doing it that way, because it starts coming near you and you stop listening to the two people before you. You're too busy thinking about what you're going to say because you're nervous about it, or about fluffing it up. Now, that was in a room. Now what we've got is the celebrity squares of death. We're in these little boxes or bubbles, and we're on screen, and people are popping up. At least Teams has now got your view of these bubbles, because you'd have names and just a bubble would appear and it'd be a name talking to you. Zoom was great because you'd get the visual, but let's face it, all these windows, and if you were doing the journey of death around the screen where it was just sort of monotonous, I think that's the trick for the networking organizer, isn't it? To try to work out different ways of mixing it up, trying to engage the small talk question that Nick's just posed there. It's really tricky. You could break people out, but then the next person will then say, well, I didn't get to meet very many people because I got chucked in a breakout room and I kind of didn't meet the other people on screen. So you then do it as a full screen. And then what happens is half of those people go quiet and don't really pipe up, and the loud ones do pipe up, and people don't mix each other. Some of my better sort of encouraged interactions were probably when we did breakout, but as a speed networking, which is something that I run every couple of months, and I've done it virtually, and last week I got to do it hybrid as well in Manchester for an expo, where you can mix and match the length of time and who you're with. Speed networking as a one-on-one, a two-on-two, a small group. There's all sorts of variations. It's not just, sit in a row and chat to someone, and that can help too to create that small talk.
So, Kirsty, it'd be lovely also to hear about the other things you've been doing. And you've also you're heavily into running, which started during COVID, didn't it? So it'd be lovely to hear about that, and also about the Lim Business Centre, which you've become very involved with, and also TEDx. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the Lim Centre, because that's been a big passion project of yours, isn't it?
Yeah. So there is a very long-winded story there. I'll try to keep it a brief one, because it's coming up for 18 months, 2 years now. Effectively, Lim Library, so Lim, where I'm based, was one of the sites identified for closure a few years ago. Funding streams into certain public buildings ended. Things like the end of Sure Start funding and the end of Citizens Advice. Meant that part of our Lim Library building was effectively left empty, and it was, going to be struggling financially. So, of course, no public member of the public wants to hear that their library's going to shut. So there was a big uproar. And long story short, a group came together that formed into a new charity and said, "Okay, what can we do?" Obviously, ownership of the building, which is council, will want a commercial solution. And so the charity that we pulled together proposed that commercial solution, which was to take some of the empty spaces within the building and repurpose it into a community and business hub. Sure. And the model is really simple. We sort of have a charity as the umbrella, as the sort of the parent body who have the agreement with to take that on the lease with the building. And then below that, we have Lim Business Centre, which is run as a social enterprise. It effectively is the trading arm of the whole experiment. Mm-hmm. And in trading, any revenue it generates, it then gives back to the charity above it, and the charity can pay the rent over to the library and therefore to the council, and any surplus can be pumped into community projects. So it's a nice little cyclical model, and we sort of came up with that. I was coming at it from the business hub angle, and there was community hub ideas already, and we fused them. So the business centre, although I'm sort of, business centre founder and manager, I've kind of been integrally involved in the whole lot, really. We have, an event room, which I'm sat at, at the moment. We have, which is obviously empty at the moment. We have hot desking space, and we have meeting rooms, and they're what we sell out, and virtual services like mail and phone handling and things like that. And the rest all pumps back into the community experiment, which is so important to sort of who I am and what I do.
I remember going to the centre to meet you, in fact, and it was lovely, beautiful space. And the other thing I thought was nice to mention is the fact that you've managed the meal scheme, which was like all about food boxes and a hot meal service during COVID, which was really nice.
Yeah. So the business centre, obviously, we had to shut down on the 20th of March. We had actually only officially started to open at the start of the year. We'd had, things take a long time pushing things through councils and stuff. And so all of last year had been a lot of time of setting up, piloting, trialing out groups. We have a lot of community projects. We have a dementia support group, and we have parenting, and we have toddler groups, and we have an affordable counselling service. So we have some amazing community projects being run from here. And so we were piloting all of those last year. Then we just got going in January and February with the stage of actually being able to properly open. And of course, within weeks of getting to that stage, we have to shut the doors, which we were absolutely gutted about. I've literally lived in this place for 2 years. I come back from work, I get changed in the loo into painting gear, and I was painting the place. And then the next day I was filling holes. And then the next day I was in PC World picking up the TV screen and coming down and putting it up. We've done everything to get this place ready. But 20th of March, we closed down. And at the very same time as obviously going into lockdown, I was very heavily involved with the Leave No One Behind in Lymm campaign, which is our local help campaign for Lymm. Yeah. From the Tuesday of that week to the Friday, we mobilised. From Tuesday, a first meeting, to by Friday, website, help phone lines, a whole network of street champions, a programme of support to help isolated, elderly, vulnerable and financially challenged. And immediately I just said, okay, the centre's been closed, we use it for that. Absolutely, we turn it round. So my event room spent the whole of lockdown with 12 fridge freezers in it, reserves of food, coordinating, that kind of thing. And I set up the meal scheme along with quite a number of other volunteers and coordinators. And we run both a food box scheme and a hot meal scheme.
And I'm sure that was really beneficial.
It's happened again today. So every Friday, it's changed scale now, obviously, but we've still run. I've just sent a whole number of updates out to local organisations today about how it's changing face. We fundraise and get money in, but we also get the food donations in. And then we ask people to nominate people through a form that need help. And then we assess that data. And then we feed into a system of preparing those food boxes every Friday morning, and also ordering hot meals from the local restaurants. So that's really important to me, that we have a holistic view of our business and community. So I was buying meals each week, at one point up to sort of 120 meals from local restaurants, doing delivery service, buying them off them, not just asking for freebies, to help put some money back locally. Then we'd get our delivery networks. We had a group of volunteers doing deliveries, and they'd go and collect the meal and take it to the homes of people, and it would come back round and we'd do it again the next week. So we're weeks into it now and still helping people. 20 boxes a day, and on Sunday night a whole load of hot meals will get to people's homes that won't get them ordinarily. So
and I think that's so valuable, because at the moment, with people coming out of the furlough scheme, I think really we're about to hit another sort of wall again, aren't we, with people really struggling. And it does worry me a lot. And you know what I'd love to sort of reflect back on you, in fact a few people have said it as well, is you are a bit of a dynamo, and you do have a lot of energy. And I also think what's lovely, and we've talked a little bit about your values, is that whatever it is you do make sure that there's a wider purpose to it, and there is some community benefit. That's what I've noticed. That people, so that's why I thought it was really nice for people to see that it's not just about Kalini and all the other things that you do, because you do have some incredible values behind everything you do, and you really want to always help people.
Thank you. I hope so. I think when I say yes to things, and I'm one of those terrible people that says yes more than I say no. That's my own downfall in life. I hear somebody's idea or thought or project, and I think, brilliant, I can help with that. I can genuinely help with that, because I know exactly what needs to happen or who they need to speak to. And that's why I can't say no, because I think, I'll just introduce them and then they can sort it. And then I think, oh, this would be really great to get involved with. I can give it some real welly and get behind it as well. And I get involved with loads of things, but it's absolutely critical to me that it all links together. So I know a lot of people go, oh gosh, you've got your fingers in so many pies, and how do you manage that? And are they linked? Well, they're all linked by the word networking. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether it's business networking or community networking. They're all linked, because it's all about connection and connecting people that will help each other's lives in some way. And I love that about my work. I still do. Yeah. However challenging it is right now, I still love what I'm doing, or obviously I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think also, apart from the networking, there's so much more to networking. And I think that we talked about values. I mean, mine are like sort of kindness, integrity, authenticity, and so on. Yours are collaboration. I hope you don't mind, I'm going to embarrass you here. Collaboration, community, humility, diplomacy, humanity, honesty, and then you're also very much into commitment, authenticity, innovation, inspired, and reliable. And I wanted to share that because I think that sometimes we find it difficult to actually actually express our own values, because you can't just go and say, oh, I do this, this, and this. But I just wanted to share that, and I think it is a really admirable, sort of character traits of yours and qualities. And I just want to share as well that Nick has said your energy is awesome. I think that's coming across.
Thank you. Right back at you, Nick, as well. Thank you.
And Nick is also an incredibly amazing person with what she does. And then we've also got Ellen Friel, who is my book mentor. She's amazing too. I don't know how you do everything, Kirsty. Thank you for listening, Ellen, and lovely to hear from you.
one of mine as well. She's spoken about book editing. So yeah, and I keep promising you, don't I, that I will. I've got the drafts of a bare bones of a book in me. It's just got headings in a blank notebook at the moment, but that is one of my dreams, to do that as well. So yeah, I think, yes, a lot of the time I've got energy. People go, when do you take a holiday? For me, I'm one of those people that says, oh, a change is as good as a rest. A change of scenery. I don't necessarily need that. I just couldn't sit and do nothing. Yes, of course I get tired like everybody else, and I do need my downtime. As an introvert, I need to pull back into myself and have that quiet time. I need to garden. I need to sit there with a cup of tea and a book. I do make time for that. I know people think, God, well, when would you have time for that? But I do, and I know when I need those things. But I think, life's short. We've all seen that, and we know that even more. And I think we really have to do things that inspire us. And there's no doubt that in some ways, going back to an employed lifestyle and things, or a lifestyle I had 20 years ago, might well be an easier bet than trying to run multiple small businesses and ventures and projects and things like that. But the reward I get from being involved in those, and that's why I keep doing it. Nice list of adjectives there. Thank you for those, Kalini.
I was going to say to you as well, it'd be lovely to know a little bit more about, so that's all the work side of it and all the good things you do for other people, but what does Kirsty do for herself? Because I know you've got your hobbies, and you've also set up, well, again, even though it's a hobby and it's also one of your passion projects, NetRun, which is linked to your running. So go on, tell us a little bit about
that's a funny twist, and it's not just my baby or anything. Although, to be honest, I do love putting structure around things. As soon as there's an idea, like, oh, let's coordinate it, let's push it bigger. You sort of say, oh, you run a lot, and you know, and people go, oh, you run loads. Let's just be really clear here. A, I don't run a lot. B, I'm really rubbish still. C, I do it under duress. It's not something I'm really enjoying. I'm now, this Saturday, tomorrow, World Mental Health Day, and this is really where it's relevant, is week 45 for me of running. So I didn't run. I did do some other exercise, not bags of it, but I did. This time last year, I run a LinkedIn local event with my co-host for Warrington, Kate Jenkinson, who's in HR, but is an amazing poet. And she's really, all in so many compatible areas in life as well. And we ran that event on mental health. And off the back of that event, which was all really sorting out this stuff, a lady called Mary Howard approached me and said, put your money where your mouth is and do something to look after your body now. And she said, do you run? And I went, no. She goes, have you never done park run? I went, no. She said, well, come and do park run. I went, no, I don't run. I do things like, aerobics, short, sharp burst, done, out. I just don't do running. I should, because it's great, it's flexible, it's free and all the rest. So I said, no. She said, come and do some. And around the same time, and it's a very, very long story of all the people that ended up in that group. But Mary was friends with Suzanne Griffiths. Suzanne Griffiths is a coach. She's done some coaching work for me. We were also, she'd spoken at my event, so I was chatting to her. She came along. There's Lady Ros Healy. She's my web designer. And Ros and I had found ourselves a few months before that, both sitting in hospital beside each other, which is a story for a chapter in a book one day as to both why we were there. But we've been looking out for each other kind of, anyway. Then there was also Jenny Olcott, who runs Creating Adventures, supporting young adults with autism and learning disabilities. So she was involved, and the core five, and there's subsequently another lady, Nettie Hind, who's joined as well. We went to Park Run, and the first week we did it, it had snowed, and it was -2 degrees. There wasn't snow on the ground, but it was -2. I didn't have kit. I had some old trainers and some baggy trackies, and I was in this fluorescent yellow jacket. It looked hideous. And I ran, and it was unbelievably long. I mean, this is how bad it was. It was 45 minutes to run 5k. I think you can walk faster than that, even if you're stopping for a chat half the time. It was 45 minutes for the 5k, but I did it without stopping. And that was week 1. And tomorrow I'll be at week 45. That group, I think, and I know they feel the same, because we do talk throughout the week, sometimes a lot, sometimes a little bit. We've probably been invaluable to each other, because we've given each other accountability not force each other, but to encourage each other to run. And we've given each other a little bit of a sounding board through a little private chat group to encourage each other along when we've got injured or when we've felt down. We've all had different personal struggles. I won't go and mention them all, but a lot of them are public in terms of some of the things that they've all faced at different times. And we've been able to pull together. And we have no aspirations of making it some big, huge, project or organization or whatever, but NetRun is our accountability pod for running, and that's kind of what I do each weekend now.
Wow. And then
I'm a bit faster. I've actually got to 33 now, which from 45 is a big jump, but I'm still not getting as fast as I'd like to be honest.
Well, a bit of a shout out here for darling Nick, because unfortunately Nick has injured herself, so she can't run at the moment. So sorry about that, Nick. So you talking about the running, she can't at the moment. She pulled a muscle in her calf. So anyway, but the other thing just to mention before we finish is I think we've got to give a shout out to your wonderful family. Oh, hello, Louise. Lovely to see you. Thank you very much for coming and listening. Hello, Louise.
Oh, hi, Louise. And I'm Louise.
Louise is an amazing painter or artist. I don't want to call you a painter. She's an artist. She's amazing. So yeah, you obviously like travel. And tell us a bit. You've obviously got a lovely husband, and 6 years of backpacking together is how you met, I can understand.
Yeah, I'm extremely lucky in that I have a really level, can cope with anything stress-wise type husband, who is a bit of my rock, really. And I know I'm lucky, and I have 3 great kids that at different times are great and at other times are a complete nightmare. That do all sorts of things most of the time, but they're good kids. So I'm very lucky. Yeah, my husband and I met at uni. I was 19, he was 21. We dated. We had loads of years of being apart because he was 2 years older. He finished and went off. And we had loads of years of living in different countries. We both have an absolute passion for travel. That is our thing. He's a geography teacher now, but he was, after uni, went into travel in the travel industry, but he's now a geography teacher, has been for 20 years. I had travelled a lot as a teenager, and as soon as I could get rid of, done with studies, we went off and travelled separately and together. And our longest stint was several years, as you mentioned, backpacking, literally with a backpack and not a lot else. We had a roll mat chopped in half because we couldn't carry one each. We had to carry so much stuff that we chopped it in half that you just got from your head to your bum. You didn't need your legs on a roll mat, so we had half a roll mat each, and we had carried different bits of the tent each. And that is really what unites us still. We still love traveling. We've had such amazing experiences, from being arrested and thrown in a police van in Chile, crossing the border there into Argentina, where we got into some trouble, not doing anything wrong, but we just picked up for being British probably there. We were nearly flattened by hippos for camping in the wrong area. We've been robbed. We were robbed in Windhoek Namibia, in the capital of Namibia, and we were robbed, and we couldn't get in. This is before you have mobiles and credit cards and everything. We just lose all our cash and traveller's checks and your passports. You're stuck, aren't you? So we've had all sorts of traveling things. And then we were very lucky when we traveled that midway, I hadn't taken my working visa in Australia, so I was able to stay there, got sponsored to stay a bit longer. So we had 2 years of living in Sydney and lived a wonderful life there, made some amazing friends. So travel has been at the core of everything we do, and fast forward, it still is. So anyone that may have connected with me either on LinkedIn or Facebook will see that I take August off. It's part of just my non-negotiables. I do work, but I don't work publicly with events. I work behind the scenes, and we travel. And we were very lucky that we still got to travel this summer in a very odd way, but we still did it. And we backpack. Well, we don't backpack with backpacks anymore. We backpack with a big car full to the brim with clutter and children's rubbish. But we take our children all over Europe and just give them the benefit of that leveling experience that I think travel gives, of being able to talk. And we couldn't do it as much this year, of just going into a bar and talking to strangers and just doing a whatever exciting physical experience moment or whatever.
This just absolutely just completely resonates, because when I met my husband, actually, he was out in America well, we met before, and then I went out to America, and he was on the secondment. So I equally spent the whole of 18 months with him, literally just traveling around the whole of North America, Canada and America, and just enjoying. And we were camping and wouldn't say backpacking, because America's a little bit further to get from A to B. You've got lots of long stretches of roads, but it is that feel of freedom and being able to just get out in the open, isn't it? Which is absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. It's freedom, but also, it's very hard. As much as you think, oh, holiday, all those months of holidaying, it's not holiday when you're traveling on the go. When you're dealing with altitude sickness because you're walking through, the Himalayas, or when you're, even on a day out on the rapids on the Zambezi, I got clonked by somebody's oar, got knocked out the boat, and nearly went down, the death rapid that you're not supposed to go down. But there were times, when we were at very low points as well, because, when we were robbed, it wasn't fun. We had times of sickness, and I think all those experiences, we kept together through. We remember now all the things in general news history that happened. We were at the Twin Towers in New York literally the week before it happened. We were in a national park in Uganda, in Bwindi, where there was the massacre in where you go to see the gorillas. We were there 3 weeks before that happened. And a lot of those stories are really important to how we've sort of remember our travels. But it wasn't, we had amazing moments, and then we had times where we saw each other at our worst, really ill. When I was in Delhi, we were so ill at times when we were traveling through India on really long journeys. And to a terrible in a terrible way at times. And now, fast forward, we've seen each other through obviously having 3 children, so he's even worse, I suppose. And we've dealt with all the things that life throws at you, with things and illnesses and death and all the things that happen in normal people's lives. But we still always talk about the travels, and I know this weekend we're planning something for the kids just to keep on the go and try and do what we can as safely as we can, obviously, at the moment.
And do you know what? In fact, I'm going to share a few comments with you as well. But do you know what's interesting is that as I was listening to you, what was lovely to see is how animated. I know you're quite energetic anyway as a speaker, but you got so enigmatic, and you were just so energized talking about it. And in fact, I was thinking to myself, it will be an amazing book. And in fact, I just will share, Sean Ellen thinks the same too. She'd love to hear more, and it would be a fantastic book. And it would, because I think those stories are just sort of the things that you don't ever think that you'll ever come across, but they're just real life stories, aren't they? And similarly, Louisa said she loves travel, but didn't do the backpacking. How fabulous. My cousin did for 8 years and lived in a hut by the roadside in India for one of them. Do you know, I think we ought to do an in conversation where everybody's sharing all their travel stories. I think it'd be awesome, because one thing I do want to do after when we get able to, is I'm going to carry on these conversations and have a few people on. And so we could do a travel vlog. It would be wonderful.
Definitely. Yeah, and it's funny, Sean Ellen, that you say that about the book. My husband has actually written the book about the travels. He wrote that. It's all handwritten. I keep telling him, get it typed up quick, because the pen's going to wear off. We're talking, it's 20, whatever it is now, 20 odd years. The pen's going to wear off. And he's got it in a drawer at work. So he's got that book. But I always sort of said, well, I've got a different take. And when we got robbed, I lost 6 months worth of diaries. I'm a big journaler and diary keeper in life anyway.
Oh, no.
And I was absolutely heartbroken. I'd lost every outpouring of every moment that we'd done traveling for 6 months, and it just went in a backpack where they just wanted cash. So I haven't added my half to that book that we started to write. He's got his version, and I've got the other side of the story, really, I suppose.
Well, you now know what your task is, Kirsty, because in fact we were going to talk about goals. Gosh, we have gone over an hour. I was trying to keep it under an hour to get onto. I was trying to get it onto IGTV. You've got to be under an hour. I might have to edit out a few bits. No, but Louise also has shared that, when Sean Ellen said about sharing your story in a book. And same with Louisa said it would make a fantastic book, wouldn't it? And hello, Zoe. Lovely to see you. Thank you for coming and listening. It's been fantastic, hasn't it? It's just so lovely. We could talk for ages, couldn't we?
Well, we do normally in the car park, exactly.
We do.
It's nice to be dry today, actually.
And just talking. So where are you heading from here? Sort of maybe if we'll keep it to a shorter. So you've obviously set up your supportive ventures and initiatives already for people, but where are you going from here?
where am I going at the moment? So just on the work front, Kalini is stripped back just at the moment in terms of number of event locations and number of events, from about 6 a month to just 3. So I've still got my Lynn Warrington-ish group, but online. I've still got my Newton St Helens group, again online. Chester and Liverpool just parked for the moment. Oldley Edge is quarterly and is also happening. Then on the women's events, I'm collaborating with Trish and Sue at the moment. It makes much more sense for us to pitch in together. So we've got a great event planned in planning for the 5th November. So generally about 3 events a month is what I'm doing on the event front until I can sort of mutate the business and work out what the right balance between in-person, virtual and hybrid. Hybrid's an area I'm really exploring and trying a lot of things behind the scenes at the moment. So that's it sort of for Kalini. Private work wise, I'm still trying to approach people and say, you might not be networking in the true sense, but networking is what you do over social media as well. It's what you do when you stand in the playground at school. It's what you do when you have a conversation. Absolutely. You should network all the time. It should transcend every conversation you ever have, not in a salesy way, but just to talk about what you do, to just talk and chat. So I'm still doing private work and can really, really, I believe, give a lot of value to people who need to lead, generate and nurture relationships in the right areas. And then the centre, we have just reopened this week. So this room, the fridge freezers and all the food stocks have gone into a different area. And we're back open again, much smaller quantities, which is challenging for the business plan. But we are open both for hot desking, virtual services and small event room hire, up to 12 people.
Right, fantastic. And I just want to share, do you know what, I agree, Sean Ellen's just shared as well, that's all for losing your diaries. Do you know what, I would feel it's like losing a limb. It's when you've actually poured your heart into something and it just disappears. It's just me awful. I bet we won't go there. I bet it was a very devastating.
I cried for days and days and days. I lost all my camera roll, in the olden days where you had the little rolls. I had 20 rolls of camera film, and I had we'd worked on a cheetah conservation farm. We'd done all this. We did some the gorillas that we did in as well. We in Namibia and Botswana. We'd hitchhike, and we ended up hitchhiking with some really, really interesting people, and have experiences on a boat where we were zooming around crocs and hippos, but alongside a fridge freezer that was being taken down the river to someone's house. And all of those pictures went. I was heartbroken at the time. It has to be said.
What you're going to have to do now? You're going to have to paint your picture with stories. You're going to have to tell your stories and bring it to life in a book so that other people can hear this. And, who knows, turn it into, we can turn this into, you're going to get the audio for this afterwards. And we can turn it into, a story. You're telling your stories. We're fantastic.
Story time. Travel and networking.
Thank you so much. Do you know what? You're saying you love the conversation. I absolutely love these. And in fact, we've got to have a conversation, haven't we, Louise? We've got to talk about you and what you do. You're an amazing lady. I just want to share, we're going to have to round things up, my dear. We've been on for quite some time. Yes. So I think it's just been amazing getting to know you. It really has. Even I've learned a few more things about you today. I didn't know all about the travel. But isn't it just lovely, the power of conversation? Because it does give people, you see a different side of them. And, I know networking is amazing and everything we do is amazing. But, sometimes just having that one-to-one, I do feel like we've just had a private little chat.
It has. And I don't know where the time has gone. I thought, how will we fill an hour? But I should have realised, because we filled 2 sitting that day we first met. And I think it just proves that we should never judge books by their cover, if we're talking a book writing analogy today, because everybody has all those amazing parts of their character and their story. And sometimes people say, oh, I don't do very much, I don't have hobbies. But, digging out all that personal stuff, that's where networking works. Because all we're doing, I say to everyone, you're just having a chat. Just treat it like you're having a chat with someone that's just a person, and believe, you'll find it. And then when you have the synergy and the similarities, that's where the empathy and the connection really kicks in. And then it's brilliant.
And that's why I do these as well, because I feel that you see a different side of people, which doesn't always come out at a net, even if you're having sometimes this is just a different way, because I'm, obviously prompting things. It's just lovely to hear about it. And I just want to take the opportunity to actually tell everybody that I have got an amazing day planned tomorrow. I'm so excited. I wanted to wait until after we've done ours to announce it. Tomorrow, I've got a special mental well-being day. And I have got 3 speakers already lined up. Unfortunately, Manny Botway, who's the head teacher at Tithington High School, can't. But because tomorrow is Mental World Mental Health Day. I'm actually focusing on mental health and mental well-being, and I've actually got speakers lined up who are going to be talking about a whole range of topics. So I've got Naomi Gilmore, who is going to be talking about her experience with suicide and suicide awareness. The connection there is that she and I are both mental health first aiders. And then after that, I was due to have Manny, but Manny's going to be talking about the school impact next week. And then I've also got a gentleman who is Mark Williams, and he is going to be talking about a very interesting topic. It's actually about male postnatal depression, because it's actually a big thing, you know, especially when it was PTSD, it was seeing a traumatic birth, and so it really affected him. And then I've got Michelle Phelps, who we're going to be talking about, again, handling mental health when you're raising, you know, you've got somebody maybe who's struggling on the spectrum. So we're going to be having some interesting conversations. So if there's anybody out there, I'm going to do a shout out. That's why I wanted to mention it. If there's anybody who wants to come on and add to that day, and we do it in conversation with me like this, I'm actually looking for 2 more people to talk from the mental health perspective. You don't have to necessarily had your own trauma or difficulties or challenges. I'm looking particularly for somebody who maybe knows a little bit about, you know, postnatal depression themselves from the female perspective, menopausal anxiety. So anybody who wants to come and join me, that'll be wonderful. But anyway, I'm going to close off here, and we're going to say goodbye, aren't we, Kirsty? Thank you so much for joining me. And we will release this. So we'll be sharing this conversation out for other people too. And is there anything last thing you want to say before you go, Kirsty?
Oh gosh, could we have another hour? Because I've really enjoyed it. It has been great. And as I reflect on it, when I watch back, I'm going to realise all the projects and people I didn't mention, because I do have my fingers in a lot of pies, and I've done some amazing work. I do have to shout out, you know, Catherine Sandlin and Sam Newey with the Soup crowdfunding initiative that we run, which is like a dragon's den for community work. You know, that has been amazing too, and they're brilliant. They're TEDx Northwich, by the way, as well. There's so many amazing people I work with, and all I would say to everyone is just think, when you're looking at someone, you know, when you look at the screen, like as we're doing at the moment, don't look at just faces in boxes and think, gosh, it's boring and it's just a game of celebrity squares. Behind every single face and in every single box is a person with a million amazing stories and talents and expertise and families and friends and things like that. It doesn't matter whether someone's introvert or extrovert. There are just stories and conversations waiting to happen. So please look at those squares and pursue some of the squares afterwards. Follow up is the best thing, and we don't do enough of it, do we? So that would be my advice to everyone. Follow up, follow through, and have more conversations with people.
Yep, and I want more conversations. If anybody wants to be in the conversation with me, let me know. And we've got exciting things coming up in the next month. So I will put that all on my page and on my profile. So Louise, thank you so much. Just last comment I'll just share. Louise was saying, have a fab day tomorrow, Kalini. Kent, mental wellness is so important. I'm doing some sessions for a company on Wednesday. Let's have a chat, Louise, after this. Listen, guys, thank you so much. And thank you, Kirsty, for joining me. It's been absolutely brilliant. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.